I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent Training. Welcome to our live question and answer class. Each Saturday I host this class, and you can type your questions in the chat at any time. Ask me about pronunciation, American accent, fluent speaking, whatever will help you to improve your confidence and your capabilities when speaking English. At the start of class, we always have a topic we're going to talk about. Today we're going to look at fluent speaking for the phrase, he shouldn't have done it. I'll break down this phrase, talk about how we link and contract, and how you can say it naturally and easily when speaking English. If you're watching this later on, please feel free to put your questions in the comments. If you're watching live, put questions in the chat at any time. Okay, so first of all, the should not have, we tend to make a contraction of should not. We can do this in writing and speaking, so I'll rewrite this as he shouldn't have done it. Notice I typically do not say he should not have done it. You rarely hear a native speaker use should not have. Maybe if somebody's really trying to stress on that, if they're upset about something, he should not have done it, and they're really stressing each of those words. Otherwise, he shouldn't have done it is how we will naturally say it. And then notice how I don't really actually say shouldn't have done it. Shouldn't and have also get contracted. So first we contracted should and not. Now, shouldn't and have in spoken speech also get contracted. In written speech, I'll write shouldn't have. Typically do not write should not have. It's not wrong to write that, but it's more common to say and write shouldn't have. But in spoken speech, shouldn't have becomes more shouldn't've. So that would look like contracting the have to just a v. So if you think about in the positive, should have becomes should've, which we don't always write, but we do typically say should've, and shouldn't have becomes shouldn't've. So you can think about it as kind of a double contraction. And how that's pronounced, both for should've and shouldn't've, is that this VE sounds like the word of, which if I write it this way doesn't make a lot of sense for the sounds, so I'll write it as a U and a V, shouldn't've. So that word of sounds like an and a V sound, shouldn't've. Of course, we don't write the word of, it's incorrect, but when kids are first learning to write English, if they're a native speaker, they might write should've that way, because that's what they hear when people say it. They hear should've as having the of sound. So shouldn't've is going to sound like shouldn't of. And actually this E, the shouldn't, we kind of go right from the D to a syllabic end there. So you can think about, I usually write it with an EN because that's how we say it in words like sudden, hidden, etc. But the sound is more shouldn't. So think about it as shouldn't of. So I'm just trying to help you notice that we just go right from the D to the syllabic end. Shouldn't. He shouldn't have done it. Then we tend to link done and it together as well. I'll rewrite that as done it. So no break between done and it. And then our he. So we go from he should not have done it, if I'm saying that word by word, to he shouldn't have done it. I like practicing with should've and shouldn't've, could've, couldn't've, would've, wouldn't've, also shouldn't, couldn't, wouldn't. All of these are very common because typically these are the helping verbs, the modal verbs plus have. We don't really say the have. So I hope that helps you. You can also practice with he shouldn't have, or she shouldn't have, and then fill in the blank. He shouldn't have gone there. He shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have done it. You can use my videos for fluent speech practice, where I go through some of these contractions and give you some examples. You can also add in your own words. It's a great way to practice wouldn't have, couldn't have, shouldn't have, would have, could have, should have, all of those typical reductions and combinations and contractions. They're a big part of sounding more fluent, sounding more like a native speaker, and being clearly understood, because when I don't contract, it tends to send another message and highlights the not part too much. He should not have done it. Sounds like very stressed on not, very negative and somewhat argumentative. But using this way just sounds natural, and it's how a native speaker would use this phrase. Okay, thanks so much for being here. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see you. Feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time. And I'll turn to your questions now. You can also leave questions in the comments, and I'll come back to those later after class, get back to you with some answers and results. We have a question about whether or not native speakers pronounce the N sound in the phrase, can we go, when speaking quickly. So, can we go? Excuse me, I'm putting an extra N there that we don't need. So if I'm saying, can we go? Can we go? I do pronounce the N, but the word can is really reduced. So rather than using the A vowel, can we go, I tend to use a schwa or almost no vowel there. So it sounds a little bit like can we go? So go is stressed, it's going to have the length, and then the can and the we are going to be reduced and linked. Can we go? If I left the N off, can we go? Can we go? It's you can still tell what I'm saying, but I do think that we close to the N before we close our lips for the W. Can we? If I don't make that distinction, can we go? Can we go? Then it could sound also like could we go versus can we go, because it would just have kind of the k sound. Could we go? Could we go? Can we go? Can we go? I guess I can drop the N a little bit and use more of a nasalized vowel there. What I would advise, though, is going for the K and the N sound. Can we go? Can we go? I think that's going to sound the most natural, and it's most typical for native speakers. But you're right to notice that there is a reduction there. So thank you for that question. Okay. Next question. We have one of our members here today. Welcome, Edison. He has a question about the mouth position for schwa, stress schwa, and O as in cot, the same, and whether those are the same. So what we're talking about here is the sound, like in above. This one is the unstressed schwa, or just schwa. The stress schwa is this vowel here, above. They both sound like but this one's going to be very short and this one's going to be long. Above, above. Those two are basically the same mouth position. The above, the might be slightly higher or more forward. It's a little bit more flexible because it's a very reduced vowel. So you'll notice that in a word like between, in the dictionary, you're going to see it with an I vowel there. I think sometimes I might say between. So I make something that's in between the high front I and the more central for that reduced vowel. So this schwa is a little bit flexible in terms of where it's made, depending on what other sounds are around it, because it's not stressed. If I'm saying a word, though, like some or such, where I have the stress schwa, then my tongue is really definitely sitting at the bottom of my mouth. My jaw is central, not very open, and there's not flexibility there. Versus the sound, like in hot or father, or what was your word, cot, is going to be definitely jaw more open. So it's not the same position as the schwa. It may be somewhat central, but we tend to, in American English, make it a little further back versus the Spanish which is here in central. But the main difference you want to look for is that if I'm saying, let's look at some examples. So if I'm looking at cut for the schwa versus cot for the cut, cot, not the same position. My tongue is resting at the bottom, cut, caught, but if I'm doing ah, it has to be further down, it's pushed and tense, and the ah, there's more opening in the back of the mouth for that ah sound to happen. I do have a video talking about schwa versus ah, which you might find helpful, and giving you a lot of examples like cut and caught, where you can feel and hear that difference and feel that difference in the tongue position. Great question. Thank you so much. And thank you for being a channel member. Okay, we have a question about the word nuisance. So let's talk about nuisance. So kind of an unusual spelling here with the UI. What's important to know here is that we have first syllable stress and we have the vowel oo. So I'll rewrite that like new, same way we pronounce the word new as in I knew it, or something new versus something old. So new is stressed, and then because since is unstressed, you're going to have a schwa there, or an I sound, an N and a S, letters S, you say this sound. So I'm going to write it, nuisance, almost with no vowel there, or you can think about it like since, nuisance, since. So I think you're pretty much using the syllabic end there, going right from the S to the N sound, sin, since, nuisance. Thank you for that request. Yeah, that's not, it's not intuitive when you look at how the word is spelled to know how that would be pronounced. Okay, we have a question about the words voyage, foreigner, situation, and can't. So for voyage, we have the oi diphthong. It's kind of a gliding sound. So I would suggest trying just to say oi. A word like boy might help you. Then add your v sound, first syllable stress, voyage. And because we're going from an oi to an I sound here, voyage, there's a little bit of a y sound connecting them. So think about it like voyage, voyage, voyage. So we don't need two y sounds there, but I'm using the oi, the letter Y, to talk about the oi sound. Voyage. He went on a long voyage. And then you also asked about foreigner. So for foreigner, we have the sound at the end, first syllable stress, so it's just like the number 4. Build that from or, for, and then even though this is kind of a complicated spelling, it just sounds like in, So foreigner, foreigner. And for situation, I do have a video already for that, so I'll direct you to my longer video for more details. But we have stress on the A syllable. It sounds like si. The TU sounds like a CH sound, sit-chu, sit-chu. A, stress, shun, situation, situation. Also another vowel linking here between the oo and the A, situate. A little bit of a w sound there, situation, situation. And lastly, you asked about the word can't. For that one, I'll direct you to, I'll give you a link for my video for can versus can't. And it goes into a lot of detail about how can gets reduced to kun, and can't is very short, and we don't always hear the T sound. So I think it'd be helpful for you to see the longer video of that. And since you reached out to me, I can let you know via email or in the comments after class to how to find my video for can versus can't. Thanks so much for being a subscriber and being part of our online courses. Okay, we have a question about how to pronounce perpetrate. So perpetrate, first syllable stress, sounds like per. This letter E is going to be a schwa, pa. Trait, we're going to use a true T here because it's a TR blend. We have the A diphthong and then a final T. sounds like perpetrate. Notice how I didn't really let that last T out. Depending on what follows it, it's going to tell you how to pronounce the T at the end of a word. But when you're just saying the word by itself, you either say perpetrate with a little puff of air, aspirated T, or an unreleased T, perpetrate, where I don't let that air out. Okay, great. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see so many of you here today. Thank you for the great questions. Again, if you're watching this later on as a replay, you can put your questions in the comments, and I'll come back to you with resources here on the channel or on our website, speechmodification.com. Okay, we have a question about when saying the alphabet L, do we use the dark L? So if I'm talking about the letter L, it's pronounced L with the eh sound and the L sound. So that is the dark L because we're ending on it. L, L. But because the eh sound is somewhat central, like same as with ul and L don't really have a strong dark L, unlike something like feel or fool, where there's really a really transition between the vowel and the L, ool, eel, where you kind of hear that O so strongly. In L, you don't really need to worry about the dark L. You could use a light L there as well. But a light L typically just starts a syllable. So if I'm saying, for example, L is a letter, L is, then I'm going to use that light L and link to the word is. If I'm just saying L, technically it's a dark L, but I'm not doing like L, O, not really heavy darkness to that L. I hope that clears that up for you. Okay, and next question. We have another channel member here. Welcome. Question about cardiopulmonary. So, cardiopulmonary. What's important is to know where to stress here, because then that tells you which vowels are clear vowels and which vowels are reduced. So if I was just saying cardio, car is stressed, but in cardiopulmonary, pulmonary is stressed. So that's like the word pull. That means our letter O in pulmonary is going to be a schwa sound. Sounds like a, pulmonary. And then for cardio, car has some secondary stress, so it still has the R sound. So cardio. And between D and O, cardio, you're going to have a little bit of a y sound connecting it. Cardiopulmonary. Then you, of course, want to practice that with how you have to say it, like cardiopulmonary disease, cardiopulmonary problems, the cardiopulmonary department, etc., because it's a long enough and challenging enough word that you want to practice it in the context where you need to use it. But you can also go slowly and just practice the word by itself. You might want to start on the stress syllable, like pulmonary, cardiopulmonary, and then come back to saying the whole thing. Or you can say it slowly, one syllable at a time, and then speed up, like cardiopulmonary, cardiopulmonary, cardiopulmonary. Yeah, that's quite a mouthful with a longer word like that. Thank you so much for being a channel member, and nice to see you here this morning. Thank you, Jonathan, for your super chat, or for gifting 5 memberships. That's wonderful. So there'll be some new members who are allowed to join the channel based on your gift. What a wonderful thing to do. You can check out some of the perks of channel membership by clicking on the join button after you've subscribed to the channel, and check out what will happen. Jonathan, let me know if you have any requests or questions. I very much appreciate that gift, as will Lando, Maria Amato, and the others who were gifted your memberships. Okay, we have a question about how to pronounce unfortunately. So unfortunately, So fortunately is stressed on for, and so is unfortunately, but there can be a little secondary stress on the un to highlight unfortunately versus fortunately. So the un is just pronounced the same with the schwa, un. Then fortunately, we have the stress on the or, so the letters or do say or. Unfortunate, the tu makes for a ch sound here. Unfortunately, and this nat, that's unstressed, so it's going to be reduced like an I. Unfortunately. Unfortunately, I don't have 3 hours to do a 3-hour class, but it's nice to see everyone here, and I'm glad to be able to answer your questions today. Okay, question about the word throughout. So what's tough about throughout is, first of all, the spelling, knowing what happens there, and then the THR can be difficult for people. So for THR, I recommend starting on R, ru, then add your TH back, ru, through. So that way your R tongue is ready for that position, and you're just sneaking the tongue forward for the TH, through, so that you're ready to go into that tight R position. Letters O, U, H just say oo here. And then as I'm moving from the oo to the ow of out, you're going to have a little vowel to vowel linking there. So you're going to notice a w sound throughout. So I would rewrite that like this. Throughout the day, throughout history. And we stress on the out, throughout. So through is extra difficult here because it's shorter. We don't have as much time as we do for the out. Yes, throughout the class, we've noticed a lot of vowel to vowel linking happening. You can check out my video for that here on the channel. You can also check out more details of that in our online courses on speechmodification.com. If I mention a video or a reference that you want to know more about, leave me a message in the comments after class and I'll send you the direct link. You can also use the search tools on our channel. So when you're on the channel page, the community page, there's a little search box. You could type in vowel to vowel linking or type in your word like throughout to find my videos covering that. Okay, we have a question about law versus low. I just did a video about these two vowels, the ah and the o, and I did a practice podcast for that, so you can check that out. But basically what we're looking at here, this is difficult for a lot of people, that when we're saying the ah sound, like in law, our jaw is open, our lips are slightly rounded. So it's very similar to the ah sound, like in lot, but we have a little bit of rounding and the mouth is a little bit more closed. So if I say la, ah, that vowel is very open. La, a little more closed, tiny bit of lip rounding. And then when we're talking about the o vowel in low, it's a diphthong. So I'm gliding from o, which is very rounded and more closed than ah, and then I'm sliding and relaxing as I go. Low, o, my jaw closes, my lips become slightly less round as I move there. So la and low. Definitely check out my video for the contrast between these two vowels, and I go into more detail there. You can also get help for these vowels and all of the sounds of English in our Sounds of English course on speechmodification.com. I walk through the spelling, the sounds, the positioning, the common words that they're in, and minimal pair contrasts like this. You might also like my minimal pairs playlist that has additional words like law versus low to help you really hear and make those differences. That's a great one. Thank you. And then you also asked about February. I do have a video for this as well, which I can direct you to after class. There's two ways that native speakers tend to say it. One, the hyper-correct way, sounds like Feb, Ru, Air, E, with two R's, February. But a lot of speakers just say February. We drop that first R and we use a y sound there, February. So February, very normal, correct. correct, even though it doesn't match the spelling exactly. February, if you want to be exact towards the spelling. But I think this is more commonly used by native speakers in general, because February is, it's just difficult to say. It's a difficult combination of sounds. So most people just say February. Yeah, okay. February is done. We're into March. Daylight savings time this weekend. Time is flying. It's really moving towards spring quickly. Okay, we have a question about whether or not, a question about Sue and sewers being complicated. Yes, so as in I'm so busy, and so as in I need to sew some clothing, have the same pronunciation. They're just the O diphthong. Then when we're looking at Sue, there was a lawsuit. He's going to sue her, or the name Sue from Susan. It has the same oo sound as in sewer. And this is, of course, the sewer system for water. That just sounds like Sue with the vowel-to-vowel linking. Sewer. So, yeah, a lot of times the pronunciation of something isn't difficult, but the spelling can be misleading. So it's really helpful to be able to learn the vowel sounds and the symbols for those. And again, our Sounds of English course can really help you for that. And we have videos here on the channel to help you. That way you can use dictionaries and other references to know what vowel you're supposed to be saying, because oftentimes spelling in English is complicated, and there are a lot of exceptions to the rules for spelling and a lot of things to memorize that can be tricky for understanding pronunciation. Great. Okay, we'll take a few more questions and then we'll need to wrap up for today. It's great to see so many of you here. Next Saturday we won't have class, but we'll have a video release that day, and in 2 weeks we'll have another live class on Saturday. So I hope to see you back here on the channel again in 2 weeks. Okay, we have a question about whether the D is dropped when we pronounce ups and downs. So ups and downs. If I'm saying each word, I would have 2 Ds here, ups and downs. But when I say ups and downs, the and becomes more of an N sound, ups and downs, and this D stays, ups and downs. You could think of it as being 2 Ds turning just to 1 D, ups and downs, but I think what typically happens there is this D drops and this D stays. Yeah, thank you for that. It's good to understand what happens in linking phrases, and often gets reduced just to the N sound. Okay, we have a question. Yes, we talked about unfortunately, so that was a very popular one today. If you just are joining and you didn't see me cover that, you can watch it after the replay or on the replay. Thank you again for being part of class, everyone, and for your questions. We have questions about different pronunciations in context for the word the and the word So the does have 2 pronunciations. The most common is the with the schwa, so voiced th and schwa. The day, the time, the place. Most of the time we can use the. The rule is we say this when the next word starts with a consonant sound. So the plus consonant equals the. So our examples, the place, the day, the time, all of these have consonant sounds. I tend to use the all of the time, and that's okay. But the rule is that if it's followed by a vowel sound, then it becomes the, where the E does say the tense E sound. So we have the plus E. So for example, the air, the egg, the edge. When it has a vowel sound following, then it's acceptable to use the E sound. The air, the egg, the edge. Some people, so is pronounced as just vowel schwa, a place, a time. When that's for consonants, when it's followed by a vowel, it changes to an. So an egg, an air, an airplane, an edge. Then it's an a and a n, and. But sometimes it just becomes reduced to more like an egg, an air. There's not a lot of, that vowel gets very reduced. You will sometimes hear people say a. So if we're talking about letter A, then it has the A pronunciation. That's the A diphthong. You will sometimes hear native speakers say a time when. I know a guy who, but usually it's if they're thinking or if they're pausing on that. Like, well, it's a place. I typically never use a. I always use a. There's no there's no rule or pattern for using a, and I recommend using a because if you use a, oftentimes your speech will sound accented, but you will hear native speakers use it sometimes. So typically, most common, you want to use the and a. You can use the when followed by a vowel and use an or n when followed by a vowel. I do have videos talking about these, and you can learn about this in my American Accent 6-week course, talking about the most commonly pronounced words in English, including the, of, for, with. Some of those everyday words are the ones that we use so much, and it's sometimes hard to notice them and change your pronunciation on them because they go by quickly. They're not usually stressed or important parts of the sentence, but they are really important parts of having correct speech in English. Great. Okay. Wonderful to see so many of you here today. Thanks for the great questions. Thank you so much for gifting the memberships. I know the new channel members will appreciate that. And if you'd like to learn more about channel membership, you can click on join and see the perks that we offer for channel members. I also highly recommend using the search tools on the channel to get answers to your questions, leaving me comments. I'm always happy to direct you to resources, and check out our online courses on speechmodification.com. Thanks so much for being a part of class. I'm looking forward to seeing you on Tuesday when our new video drops, and another new video for you next Saturday, live class in 2 weeks. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye, everyone. Thanks for a great class today.